funny thing about this, the State of the Union was the first time I did it, I wasn't exactly sure when I would be on TV. Now I know I have a hard time not being on TV when you're walking down that aisle. And no one is paying much attention to what's going on until there is an announcement. Mr. Speaker or Madam Speaker, the President of the United States, and actually my counterpart is the person who walks into the chamber and says, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, and then everybody actually turns, and I then am with the President and walk in. Well, as Peggy knows, I have 14 grandkids, so knowing that I was going to be on TV, I said, well, Grandpapa will have a signal for you, and my signal was to fix my tie. And again, I wasn't quite sure whether the camera was on me or not, so I probably straightened my tie. This was with President Bush, probably about 20 times. And finally, President Bush says to me, your tie is perfect, what are you doing? And I said, I was sending a signal to my grandkids, and he said, you need a new signal. So over the years, I've changed it to, I pull the ear, I might do the tie, I might do this, and this finally one, my brothers, I come from a family of 10, and most of them were all law enforcement. They would be sending me emails as I'm sitting on the floor trying to look at that during the speech, saying that I look like a third base umpire, or coach. all the signals, so it has been kind of humorous. And I'll tell you one other President Obama's record. This is the strange things you end up doing. After the inaugurations, one of the jobs of myself and my counterpart on the House side is to get the President to and from wherever he's going to go. And as you might suspect, that's all very well rehearsed to the second. So as soon as President Obama was done, I was about 8 rows behind him. I get down there and begin the escort out, and he's shaking hands as he does at the State of the Union. And we finally get inside, just inside the building. It is very cold out there. Inside the building, it's the first time everybody's off camera. And President Bush turns to me and says, where am I going? I said, you're going home. And he laughed a little bit and said, thank God. For your laughs, is exactly what he said. And we walked up a flight of steps, 2 flights of steps, and got to the rotunda, where we're going to cross the rotunda and escort the outgoing president down to the helicopter. So we're standing there once again, everybody's getting their top coats off, kind of collecting their wind, and I turn to them and say, as soon as you step through the door into the rotunda, you're going to be on television again. So everybody needs to have their act together. And at that point, President Obama says to me, Chief, can I talk to you for a minute? Now, we're standing right inside the door on the west front of the rotunda. I step aside, and President Obama steps up to me, and President Bush is there, and the wives are back there, and the entourage is behind them, and he said, can I walk President Bush down to the helicopter? And I said, no, sir. You're to walk him down to the last landing, if you can picture that on the east front, where you and your wife will say goodbye to Mr. and Mrs. Bush, and they walk down to the helicopter. Because again, this is all rehearsed. TV angles, bands, military folks, snipers, counter snipers, all that stuff. And then there's a slight pause, and he says, but Chief, can I walk President Bush down to the helicopter? And I said, no, sir. You're to walk him down to the last thing, and I said the same thing again. A 1/10 of a second seems to go by, and he says, but Chief, can I walk President Bush down to the helicopter? Well, by then the light is now getting to light up in my mind. I said, you're the President of the United States. You can do whatever you want. And he said, I'll walk him down. So right away, we switched. We notify security and how everything's going to change. And if you saw that particular moment, it was the first time it was done. It was pretty special. He and Mr. and Mrs. Obama walked Mr. and Mrs. Bush down to the helicopter, myself on one side and Paul Irving, it was Paul Irving at that time on the other side. And it was a very special moment. But for me, it meant this. I was the first person in the free world, in the world, to tell the President of the United States no, twice. And then the first person in the free world to roll over under the slightest bit of pressure and tell me yes. So a kid from the south side of Chicago, his father was a milkman. It's been a nice ride, so thank you very much.